Hey guys, so this week we're going to be talking about Moses, and Moses is a very critical character of the Bible. He wrote Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So this boy wrote 5 books, which is known as the Pentateuch, or the first 5 books of the Bible. And there's a lot of information on this man. So thus, this is going to be a 4-part series, each covering an individual part of his life. And today we're talking about the setup for the 10 plagues. So we're talking about the beginning of his life and his call. So let's get into it, shall we? So if you remember, we left off with Joseph. And Joseph was second in command of Egypt, and his family got moved into the land of Goshen, which is some of the best land of Egypt. But here's the thing though, 400 years have passed now when Exodus starts. And it says that a new king has come over Egypt that does not know Joseph. And so he sees his Israelite people as a threat. So he decides he's going to curb the population. Because these people are so numerous that if they decide to side with one of Egypt's enemies, Egypt's going to lose. So in order to curb the population, he puts them into slavery and deals with them very cruelly. And this is with the thought process that if he makes their lives a living hell, then they won't have kids. But here's the thing, they're growing even more now that he's dealing with them cruelly. And so he decides to take a little bit more of a direct approach, calls in all the Israelite midwives, say, hey, if she has a boy, kill it. And so, his Israelite midwives refuse to do it. They just go and they just don't do it. They just deliver the babies as usual. And when Pharaoh calls them in, it's like, hey, why didn't you do this? They say to Pharaoh, his Israelite women, man, they're just having babies before we even get there. There's nothing we can do at that point. It's already done. And so, Pharaoh accepts the excuse and then makes a decree that any male children born of the Israelite people are to be thrown into the Nile, which, babies can't swim. So this is a way of absolutely murdering this population. And this is when Moses comes into the story. Because you see, this child is born, and the mother keeps it for about 3 months, and then realizes that she can't hide him forever. And so she makes a basket, sets him in the basket, sets him down the river, down the very same river that Pharaoh had commanded the babies to be thrown into. And so this baby's going down the river in this basket just the right time as Pharaoh's daughter is coming out to take a bath, sees this baby in the basket, takes it up out of the water, calls it Moses, which means to be plucked out of the water, finds its mother, has her come tend to this baby in order so that it might live, because this isn't a time when they had things like formula. So she called the mother, had to breastfeed the baby and all that kind of stuff until it was enough to be weaned off, at which point Pharaoh's daughter adopts the baby. So now this boy Moses is getting raised in the household of Pharaoh. So a child that Pharaoh was trying to kill is now growing up in Pharaoh's household. Think about the irony of that. It is beautiful. Not to mention the fact that him going down the Nile River, his mother did exactly what Pharaoh had commanded. It did not end the way he intended it to end. And it's absolutely beautiful, the irony here. So the story skips ahead to Moses as an adult. And it says that one day he's going out to visit his people. And while he's out, he sees this Egyptian beating on this Israelite. And so Moses looks both ways, goes up, strikes the Egyptian, because he can't just stand by and watch this injustice happen. And when he strikes him, he happens to kill the Egyptian. So he quickly buries him and then goes off. Next day, he's coming by, around the same way, and he sees Israelites fighting one another. And the word used here is the same for Moses striking the Egyptian. So this is a very fierce fight. This isn't just some fisticuffs. No. So Moses breaks them apart, gets the wrong party, and says, hey, yo, what are you doing? Don't you know this is your kinsman right here? So the man looks at him, and he says, who put you judge over us? Who termed you a prince? What are you going to do? Kill me like you did that Egyptian yesterday? Moses goes very afraid at this because he realizes that he's been found out, and he knows that Pharaoh's going to try to kill him when he finds out, which we see in a few verses down. When Pharaoh finds out, he tries to kill Moses. So Moses flees to Midian. So Moses goes out to Midian, sits at a well, and while he's sitting at a well, these daughters of a priest of Midian who are tending to flocks come up to water the flocks, And while they're coming up, these shepherds come up and start shooing them off to tend to their flocks first. And Moses takes care of the shepherds, allows these women to take care of the flocks, and then return home. When they return home, they talk to the father, whom we find out is Jethro. And Jethro is like, hey, yo, why are you guys back so early? And so they tell him about what is called here, this Egyptian. So I just want to appreciate here that they recognize Moses not as an Israelite, but as an Egyptian. This man looks like an Egyptian, which just shows how removed he is from his people. And so Jethro says, hey, yo, go get this man, bring him back in and treat him nice, because he took care of you guys. And so they go, they find Moses, they bring him back. So Moses stays with Jethro for a little bit, and he marries one of his daughters, Zipporah, and they have a kid. Moses has been there for quite a while. And while this is happening, Pharaoh, the one that's trying to kill Moses, dies. So now there's a new Pharaoh in power. So it's safe now for Moses to return. And then it goes into a little bit about God hearing the pleas of the people of Israel, hearing their sufferings. And he decides he's going to send someone to free them. He's going to send Moses. So while Moses is out tending to Jethro's flocks, he's out in Horeb by this place called the Mountain of God, which is often considered a synonym for Mount Sinai. And Moses sees this bush that's burning, and God is in this bush because he hears God calling out to him from this bush. And then God explains that it's time to fulfill the promise that God had made Abraham centuries ago. It's time for the people of Israel to leave Egypt, go into Canaan, and claim it as their own. And so Moses then brings up the question, well, what if they ask who sent me? And so we see God give Moses his personal name, which literally means I am, which is such a compelling thing for him to be named, because this was a time when names meant everything. Moses was called Moses because he was plucked out of the water. Jacob was called a usurper because he was holding on to his brother's heel. And a usurper very much defined who Jacob was. That Abraham literally meant exalted father, which he's the father of a nation. You see, names matter. And so God gives a name that has no one defining attribute, because God is no one defining thing. He says, I am has sent you. And so Moses brings up another question. What if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm just making it up? And so God says, all right, cool. I'm going to give you 3 miraculous signs to do. Perform them, they will absolutely believe you. There will be no doubt. And so Moses then keeps pushing his luck and says, all right, are you sure you want me to do this? Because I got this problem with my mouth. I can't speak right. I don't speak eloquently. I'm not the right person for this job. And God says, no. I chose you for this. I made you for this. I made your mouth. I made your tongue. It will speak correctly. I will put my words in you. Moses persists. Like, no. Surely I'm not the right person for this. I'm not the right person. So God eventually relents and says, all right, cool. Bring along your brother Aaron. Speak through him. But we see, as events transpire, that God absolutely continues to speak to Moses exclusively. That it's Moses that goes up on the mountaintop. Aaron's left down with the people of Israel. God chose Moses. Which is a very compelling thing for me. Because as one who did have a speech impediment growing up, and who still struggles with it, the idea that God will speak through you is very compelling to me. It resonates very deeply as one who's going into ministry, who's trying to preach God's word, trying to be his mouthpiece. But that's the end of what we're going to today. Next week, we'll get on to Moses going into Egypt, because that's where the story goes right after we get done with this burning bush thing with God calling Moses. Announcement or two? I am working on a collab with Holistic Healing. Link to her in the description below. And we're going to talk about being a Christian nerd. Because if you don't know, I'm a huge nerd. I'm actually wearing one of my favorite shirts right now, which is an Avatar: The Last Airbender shirt. And kind of countering the stigma that's a lot of these nerd stuff is just of the devil and should not be followed at all. Of course, I'm not saying go overboard and just worship these things. No. Moderation in all things, of course. That has to be your first priority. But it's not bad to enjoy these things. So that's what we're working on right now. And with it is going to come a whole separate channel, which kind of talks more about that kind of stuff, which I'm still debating on the name. So if you have anything that you think it should be named, let me know down in the comments below. But as always, I appreciate all of you watching. And stay safe, friends. May the Lord be with you.